in the interest of getting things moving forward, I think we should start talking because we really only have booked until 7 o'clock.
Yep.
And everybody's had a long day and been boiling water, most of us. So, yeah. So anyway, as soon as we can, we'll get the PowerPoint up.
Sorry, we can start without it.
Yeah.
Does everybody have this?
I did share a more detailed scope of work that Eric Weiss, the lead consultant, for the Springfield's, MBI, grant to create a digital equity plan for Springfield. He and his team have been putting that together. Councilor Fenton and I have met with him a couple of times, at least already, 3 times, I think. So what you received a couple days ago in email is more detailed, and then I think the PowerPoint will be prettier. But I'm going to pass the mic over to Eric to begin speaking.
Figuratively, here we go. Good evening all, I am Eric Weiss. I am the Director of Economic and Municipal Collaboration for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, which means I work with everybody. I work with the towns, I work with the businesses, I work with these fine people here. We are working specifically on a project through the Mass Broadband Institute, which is part of the MTC, the Mass Technology Collaborative. Whole new bunch of acronyms here, to fund where they're trying to identify and come up with plans and strategies for reducing and eliminating digital inequity in the system. And we all know, we will go over different root causes, but the idea here is that there's money that flows from federal grants to MBI, and then that money is set aside very much on a population basis by MBI to hire a registered consultant with MBI, which Pioneer Valley Planning Commission became. So we are now working with the city of Holyoke. We will be working with the city of Chicopee. We will be working with Wilbraham. That paperwork got done today, and our goal is to complete the same set of paperwork for the city of Springfield within the next couple of weeks, God willing, and otherwise it'll be a month or 2. We don't know how fast MBI will work on it. So what was sent to you was...
You have a copy of this?
I do.
Okay.
Well, no, wait, I don't have that one. I have the old one. So is it there?
Roberta, have you got the document?
We got Roberta.
Could you, she's still there, could you put that in the chat? Roberta, did you receive the email? Just in case.
Oh, Brian.
Okay, I'll keep going while you guys figure that out. So what you have in front of you is a document that was emailed to you, is the more detailed quote unquote scope of work, which it really just defines the roles of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, that's us, the roles of the city in terms of how we coordinate things with the city, a timetable, an estimated timetable for getting the work done, as well as guidance on how we're going to get that work done. So what we were hoping to do was talk about the document that was sent to you, but also show you a PowerPoint that would kind of simplify things and allow for more open discussion. And as long as I've got them here, I want to thank our friends from Wayfinders, because what they did is they helped us create a PowerPoint that was in both English and Spanish, which we are now brazenly using wherever we go, giving them credit wherever we go, because we appreciated their help on this, and allows us to communicate to a whole group of people in ways that we weren't able to before. So from there, if you open to basically the first page, page 1, where it says introduction, scope of work, we will work collaboratively with the city and the people that the city identifies that they want on the committee. This isn't our project. This is your project. This is the city's project. We're working for you, and we're paid by a third party, that's MBI. So we don't pretend to own this, because we don't. We do make sure that we tell you that we're here to work for you and we're open to your ideas. So the idea of creating a core planning group, thus far it's been Frank and Jean and Michael. And we, are working away, trying to get all the preliminary alignment done with MBI to make that work. And, oh, there we are. And so I'm doing what they call stretching in the radio business, I believe. So what we did was we tried to create a PowerPoint that would summarize. So who's gonna be flipping the pages of the PowerPoint? Roberta, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I really appreciate your help. I want you to know that, so.
And Roberta, either on the top left, or I think also on the bottom right, there should be
There you
a
go.
symbol that'll let you make the whole thing bigger. If you just go to the presentation symbol. Not easy. I'm getting that right advice, yeah.
That would be Doug Hall from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Oh,
Nobody here can read it from this distance, right?
somewhere, right?
Slideshow.
Big slideshow.
Yeah, you're in the general area, Roberta. Which one is it?
To the left.
The-
There you go. Yay. All right, Roberta.
Teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
All right.
And now, Michael doesn't have to.
Very quickly, our team is made up of myself, Doug Hall. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Doug Hall at Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
And Michael DiChiara, who's our consultant, who some of you know, or most of you know.
Where am I facing? Over here. There we go.
So I'm not the smartest guy in the panel here. They're much smarter than I, but I can present well, so I'm here. So I feel like I'd be preaching to the choir here. Digital inequity is a significant issue. We all know that. We are providing, this is basically what I have explained all to date. So I'm gonna ask Roberta to go to the next page. There's no reason to repeat all of this. We do know that the common issues are lack of connection, frequently due to affordability or lack of infrastructure. I know there are places where infrastructure is either very weak or non-existent. We all know that there's a wide range of devices that people use to connect. And a phone can't do everything, although everybody would like it to. And especially when you're filling out forms and registering and things like that, it's certainly much easier if you have access to a computer. And that I think one of the bigger challenges along with all of that is familiarity. And I say it this way, I don't claim to be an expert. I put myself at about the 50% level. I'm more than willing to ask for help, but I use it every day. So if I'm around somebody who's not using it every day, the challenges must be enormously great for them. Next page, please. We're a good team. We do recognize that there have been a lot of efforts, whether it's in Holyoke or Springfield, as this slide indicates, through senior centers, through the libraries, there's been programs and classes, and that helps. There's no doubt, and we greatly treasure the fact that those exist and that they've done a lot of good work. But there's a definite need for more and more research and checking out where the resources are lacking that need to be examined beyond what has already been put out there. But moving on to the next page. We all know that in terms of what we need access to, it can be remote medical care. The other day I had a remote visit with my doctor that worked out fine. But as someone who has Parkinson's disease, I need access to see doctors on a regular basis. So I have made good use of this during both the pandemic and now beyond the pandemic. So this is one I really appreciate. There's obviously the need in education. There's need in interacting with government when you're filling out forms for public benefits. When you're looking for housing, there's a whole other side of that, which not only are you looking for housing, but you need access to the right documents. The one that is most obvious is what we'll call the Amazon bullet, which is, ordering things online, as it were. And then for things like, I was president of a synagogue in the region during COVID, and the remote access was critical to our congregation getting access to what they needed and what they wanted. We throw in the AI reference here. We know nobody really knows what AI is, but everybody likes to talk about it. But it's coming and there's more pieces to it, and it needs to be recognized as a part of what's going on. We also want to make sure that it's clear that what we're really talking about is trying to avoid getting deeper into the place where people are being left behind. If you could go to the next page, that would be great. So here's the core of the process. We convene the planning group like we talked about. We begin to collect data from community and from the city, and we map the assets. And this is going on statewide at this time. We engage with people like yourselves and many others. There's gonna be plenty more of that coming at the community level. From all of that, we create a municipal profile in which we try to identify the weak spots and the strong areas. Parallel to all that is a needs assessment, which is where we really rely on a lot of back and forth and feedback from all of you. Towards the end of the process, and this is all meant to be a back and forth process. We're not writing something that you don't know about. We're gonna develop short and long-term strategies and explore long-term funding items. The goal of this effort is to create a plan, a strategy, a strategic plan for the city that identifies where the challenges are and also begins to identify how those challenges can be met. Next page, please. This is a project timeline that just gives you an idea of how we're trying to do this. I know there was a great desire on the part of the city council to expedite this. Michael Fenton was making a big point of that. We're gonna do the best we can, but we can't, we have to get all documents signed and everything aligned that way. But this gives a general reference of the timeline that we'll be on and how we'll get things done. So this is a rehash or very much what I just covered in a timeline and with milestones type chart. Next page, please. So again, this is all obvious, but it needs to be said. We're going to be focusing on 6 main areas in accordance with what MBI wants us to do, and obviously in accordance with what really needs to happen. We're going to be talking about infrastructure availability, affordability for residents, that is a big one, accessibility, digital literacy skills and training, safety and security awareness, and access to appropriate devices. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the scope of work for a minute. And I'm going to ask everybody to look at the City of Springfield bill. So it's page 3. And we're just going to go over what is there so everybody understands what we're talking about. I'm going from the top. It says municipal board planning team.
I guess Will Brock has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Alex Martin was just emailing that she can't be here tonight with her apologies.
William Brock has a question.
Just out of curiosity, guys, based on this spreadsheet, is this in order of priority or is this just our main 6 focus areas?
There's not necessarily a priority to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. If I may, I think that, you know, that is still to be determined through the workshops
That's
and
right.
such.
That's right.
With where we're going to be centering community members to discover what is the most pressing, what are the most pressing issues for them.
We will create an open process whereby not only will information be open, but we'll also make sure that it aligns with what the city considers and you as the representatives of the city consider the priorities.
So I haven't been able to figure out when I share how to raise my hand, so I'm just yelling at you.
Shout it out.
It's in the reaction section. It took me a while to find it too.
For clarification, I'm
Yep.
not seeing reaction down here. Anyway, just for clarification, like it says, the city of Springfield will.
Yep.
Who is the city of Springfield?
All right, I'll tell you what, we're gonna hold that question until I get to that line and then we can figure that out, okay?
Okay.
All right. So initially, right now, it is the core planning team of Frank Robinson, Michael Fenton, and Jean Canova Albano. And Tom Ash has been aware of what we're doing through the mayor's office. So it's Canosa, isn't it?
It is.
It's Canosa. It was
This is- that
Baldwin.
was
Let me
Alright.
put it slightly differently. Is it the working group or is it not the working group?
So that's a good question. So I think I would say that the core group Eric and PVC is referencing, we are the working group subcommittee that was assigned to work out details with PVPC, so we are still the working group. So while Eric is referring to us as a core group, we are a subcommittee of the working group that was set up by Mike and Jesse.
Okay, so in the scope of work, where it says the city will, the city will, or whatever, every
Right.
reference to something that seems like an authority or a decision-making body, it's the subcommittee of the working group.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm writing that down. All right,
yeah,
so,
I think just one other qualifier, so the arrangement with PVPC came as a result of the working group and the mayor's office. So the mayor's office has skin in the game also, so the working group represents the mayor's office as part of this initiative, so I think on that core group, they have Tom
yeah, Tom.
Ash.
Yeah.
Yeah, representing the mayor's office, so we're connected now to the mayor's office in this initiative.
Mhm. And my 2 cents are that we're being mindful of the fact that the subcommittee that's meeting right now was appointed by City Council President Jesse Letterman, and there's a end date for that. And with the end of that city council term, December 31st, 2023, I personally don't think that means that folks who were appointed to the committee will no longer be needed or welcomed. I think that we have gathered such a fantastic group of people bringing so much to the table that there's going to be room and need for folks to continue to be involved.
And we would welcome continuities as the PVPC, so if there's a way to work with the new council and the new council president to get that continuity, we're all in on that as well.
okay, Jean, I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree. I always feel needed, even if it's just to go to the next slide. But I think we were named by the president of the council. So we
Yes.
have, I think, an obligation to report back to the president of the council by the deadline that was established. Even if
Yes.
that report says we're available to keep working.
Right.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly, so
And
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that came up in our meetings, planning meetings, that there should be some type of interim report from
Yes.
PVPC consultants
Yeah.
on the MBI grant that can be shared with the city council as a body. And the president certainly.
So we fully recognize that there will be an interim report by the end of December. So with that, there's, I want the place where it says the timeline. We'll work with the resource partners. We're gonna facilitate and coordinate 4 neighborhood community forums. And that'll bring in people from all over all different parts of the city. And then we're gonna conduct 3 charrettes in which we'll make some concrete suggestions, create some concrete applications and directions to go in, based on the input that we get from the people that are in attendance there. So it's gonna be, for lack of a better term, an iterative process where each time we'll learn more and more and more, and we'll use the information we get to inform the next step. And that's how we plan on going. So we will be.
Would you like me to share that document instead of the slideshow at this point?
Oh, I would welcome that. I wasn't expecting such
Support.
great technical support.
I might be sending you a resume, you never know.
We laugh, but you know.
Hey, I would
Trying to
welcome the help
team.
at this point. I'm as working on too many initiatives as it is already, as Frank well knows.
I'll give you one more, so.
This is a unique meeting. We're getting all of our help from the people we're trying to inform.
Uh-huh.
I think that's
There's something
fantastic.
there, there's something there. Robert, is that a document that you already have in your email or?
This is the same one you emailed to me a couple of
Correct.
days ago? Okay.
Yes.
We're
What
gonna put you
page,
to work in our IT department.
what
We're on
page
page
would you
3.
like?
Page 3.
Okay. That's the documents, and then page
3.
3.
I don't know if people can read that or not, but
Bottom right corner of your screen there, if you can make that, move
Bigger.
that thing over to the right.
slide it a little bit. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
There,
All right, so
and then just reposition. Perfect.
I think we want your resume. We definitely want your resume. Okay, so that's the pieces up above that talk about the forums, and then we will do, if people know what charrettes are, it's a process we go through to intentionally inform and ask questions and get people's feedback and opinions about what directions we're going in. Where it says the city of Springfield will, if the we can certainly say the subcommittee of the working group or whatever language we want. Everything is consultation back and forth. We are really just trying to make sure that we work with the process the way it's supposed to be. I'm not gonna go through these one by one. But we will be doing many different activities, both behind and in front of you, to allow things to occur. And what we're really looking for is feedback from those who represent the city in this process. So that's all of you on the committee, with feedback to us. And if you go to the next page, there's a timeline, which if all the paperwork gets signed at the right time, we can move that timeline ahead. But that very much depends on, keep going, go up a little bit more. Okay, hold it right there. So, thank you. I'm not trying to order you. So the first section, we're already underway in terms of the preliminary and prep work. That's what we've been doing. Don't tell anybody at MBI, but we're starting to collect data too. But eventually we got to get paid for that. And we're going to be doing the needs assessment and mapping as things get signed and moved. But this step 2 is the key to the whole process. That's where we're going to be doing the community forums. That's where we're going to be doing the charrettes. And when we're all done with that, we're going to talk about this interim report at the end of December 2023. It's right in the middle under 3.1 rather. We know that is a key moment for this group because that needs to be delivered to this version of the city council. And again, to inform how we move ahead with the next version, and with the hope that the city council president, whomever they're going to be, recognizes the value of moving this forward and continues to let the committee work, which I will certainly advocate for. So if you need me to come to a city council meeting and advocate for that, I'm more than happy to do it. That lays out the timeline with that key December date there. And then the other parts match up again with what we've talked about in terms of timelines and what we're trying to do. So, with that lays out the entire process. I am not pretending that this is gonna be easy. I'm not pretending that this is, all this information is gonna be easy to gather, but I am understanding that this is a very needed process. And there are many in the city who have been advocating for some form of digital equity for quite some time. I'm glad we are the agency to help you out and the agency that's been able to come in and work with all of you. And I think that we're in a good place now to get this started. Again, we're waiting on paperwork signatures to allow the money to flow. But in terms of intent, I think everybody's on the same page. So if we could go back to the PowerPoint, or we could just open it up to discussion. I know some people are time limited, so I'm thinking, why don't we just have some discussion at this point? And if there's things that I've left out of the PowerPoint that I need to fill in on, I will.
I would like to say something very quickly, and that is I attended the Comcast presentation today about how to get onto the internet. I found it interesting. It was on the internet. But I am wondering if that same presentation, I have the slides from it, but I'm wondering if the same presentation can't be put on Focus Springfield, so the people who don't have the internet that might be able to have television would be able to see, and it tells about the through Comcast, their Internet Essentials and the American Connectivity Program. So it's really good at talking about those things, but it would be nice if it would be able to be seen by people who don't have the internet.
Well stated.
So Charlie, one of the things we might do, with that recommendation is, Michael and I, through the Alliance, meet with, Brad at Comcast regularly, and so we will carry that suggestion forward to Brad, see if he'd be willing to do something like that with Springfield Focus. And we might consider, as we move forward ourselves, using Springfield Focus as a way of getting the message out as well.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you raising that, Charlie. I wanted to mention, not seeing anybody else's hand up right now. I wanted to mention, on the draft that I have,
Mhm.
I don't see that making the interim report to city council is on the timeline. And we only discussed that after this draft was created. Maybe you have a more recent one. Is it on there?
It's on the chart, not on the
It's
timeline.
on-
Okay.
It's on the chart.
I think it's so important that I don't want to lose it. So if that. could
No, it's
be
on the
there.
chart on 3.1.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Excuse me.
The one
And it's
thing
on
I would,
our-
No, it's something that would have to be in December at the latest.
Yeah, but it says December of 2023. On mine it
Is
doesn't.
that,
You have an old version maybe?
I may, this was the one that we reviewed at our
Okay,
most
here,
recent
take
meeting.
that one.
I'll take this. Thanks.
Yeah,
I didn't have
No,
time
no,
to print it
no,
out. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good.
Thank you.
Yes.
My pet project.
the one thing
Sorry.
I would just add, William asked earlier about the chart of prioritization. And I think, Gene, you responded correctly, but to connect the dots, William, if we go through the data collection, we go through the community engagement, coming out of that should be a sense of either priority or interrelationship between the different buckets of affordability, devices, connectivity, all the variables that are listed in the table. So that's exactly what the deliverable will be, is some kind of analysis from all the data, how it plays out, how they relate, how they get prioritized.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So-
I'm seeing, was that, do you have a follow-up to that, or I was gonna go to the people with the hands up?
So I actually have a little bit of follow up to that, and I had my hand up for a different question, but
Okay, all right.
that question was more speaking from, I run 2 housing programs, housing rehabilitation programs for the city of Springfield, so I have about 300 low income applicants. So that's just kind of why I was asking that question, because I have a little bit of personal input as well on that subject. So
Awesome.
so just to follow up with the reason I raised my hand and the question there, are we looking to identify specific demographics, age groups, groups of people, like certain community groups, or are we looking to identify specific regional areas of the city that are impacted in certain ways?
I would say both to that, but if our technical assistant can bring back up the PowerPoint, we could show you.
Mhm. And I had.
You want to
shared-
complicate my life, I see.
Actually, this is great. Speaking on digital equity, I tried to look up the attachment on my phone earlier and it was unreadable because the tables blended in with all the text and you
Yeah.
actually couldn't read, what was actually going on in the report. So
I believe you.
Okay, what page in the PowerPoint would you like?
I don't know. It's a good question. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay,
And for the benefit of the folks here from PVPC, I had shared the work that the community engagement subcommittee did with them. And let them know how much I relied on a lot of the observations and research there to create the grant application that got us this MBI connection. So that's Roberta, Alex, who couldn't be here today, and Charlie, I believe, made up that subcommittee. Roberta, you have brought that up. I don't know if there's more to say about that, Eric, before we go to Roberta's question.
page 9.
Yeah, okay, so
They're all gonna flow together here. Go ahead.
So this is Doug. Eric's passed the proverbial microphone to me. So yes, the short answer is yes. All of those groups that you identified are amongst the priority populations, most of which are required by the originating federal legislation and have been also incorporated by MBI in their requirements for working with us. So just to spell it out for folks, which I don't really need to because it's there on your screens. It's folks that are struggling to make ends meet. They provide a definition as being 150%, I believe, of the federal poverty level. Older folks, incarcerated individuals, we're a little fuzzy on exactly what they mean by that, but we're working on getting some answers. Veterans, individuals with disabilities, people with a language barrier, whether that be literacy challenges or perhaps English isn't their primary language, which I think highlights the importance of having some of our materials at least translated into the languages that are most predominant other than English. Members of racial or ethnic groups, folks that live in rural areas, obviously that's not something that Springfield needs to worry about. And then just generally people whose housing is unstable. Obviously, it's especially since so many times we're talking about service that's connected to an actual address. If you don't have an address, that becomes obviously additionally challenging. And I think it probably goes without saying, but for those individuals, and there will be many that have several layers of these challenges, their ability to access digital resources is sort of exponentially complicated.
Thanks, Doug. I'm not sure, Roberta, if your question follows up on this or if there's a different topic or.
A combination.
Sure.
Do you still need to see this? Because when you see this, I don't see you.
So I think that can come down now.
Okay. There were a couple of things that do in fact connect. One, I realize you're using the federal categories here. I wanted to point out that as far as I'm aware, in Springfield, there's no prison, there may be a jail, and there are certainly halfway houses. So when we look at what's meant by incarcerated for Springfield, we may need to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was surprised at how few, according to the census, how few veterans there are in Springfield. I was extremely surprised at how low that number was. Where it says the federal thing refers to minorities. Springfield is a majority minority city.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important because I noticed in the other document, in the scope of work, under minorities, it has the Latino community. The Latino community is actually 47% of the population. So if you were talking about a minority group in Springfield, you'd have to be speaking about European Americans, not, So we may want to change the wording.
Yeah.
We may want to change the wording there. It could say minoritized, which means if you are part of the majority, but you're treated like you're the minority, you would fall into that category. So those were a couple of things I wanted to mention there. The other thing is when our subcommittee of the working group was looking at categories, we felt it was important to include school children and their parents or caretakers, which is not a category in the federal things. Certainly during the lockdown period of the pandemic, they were very much impacted negatively. The school board did, or rather the school, I'm not sure if it's the board or the individual schools, they did give out hotspots. But many people live in places where the hotspots don't have anything to connect to.
Mhm.
So it's an ongoing problem that still needs to be addressed, even when hardware is made available on an individual basis. I think there was one other thing oh, yes. When I looked at some of the information that was available, in fact, I think it was Frank who made the thing available. When I looked at the data for who does not have certain kinds of access to the internet, people were answering, I think, based on, a lot of people, I think, were answering based on what their smartphones could do. But then when I looked at the maps of where the internet actually existed, I found it was far more, or didn't exist rather, the internet cabling and whatever. It was very concentrated in certain parts of Springfield, and it surprised me. So I felt as though we need somebody with the technical expertise to figure out why downtown Springfield does not have network cables. I mean, it could be a problem with the data, or there could be a problem. Maybe there are too many people between the businesses and residents who are downtown. Maybe that explains it. But I think we need a techie person to look at that. I don't think asking people whether or not they have access is necessarily going to explain what that problem is in those concentrated areas. The things that Jean gave you, it has the maps. One of them shows what I thought was an oddity. And that's what I'm referring to. There's a funny thing there. But other than that, I was really, very happy to see this document and hoping that we can move ahead quickly.
I'm ready to hire you.
That's true.
You didn't ask what I charged, though.
Money's no object.
So Roberta, just in terms of your point and the data, both the FCC and then NBI have been building maps of sort of ground tested infrastructure. So where there really is signal and there really is service as opposed to what the providers say there is. And so I think one thing we can do in the report, as opposed to just pulling down, data about demographics and things, is using that mapping information to identify where there's gaps in city coverage.
Okay, that's great to hear.
The other thing, I had mentioned this at a meeting a few months ago that sometimes, like Comcast would say, they have a service that comes to my house. I happen to live in an unusual 4-story single family house. If I go to the 3rd and 4th floors, if it wasn't for the fact that I ran Ethernet cable, I would not have the ability to connect with the internet. And a few other people chimed in that they have they've heard of or experienced similar problems. So in cases like that, we do have to ask people, where do you really have access in your building, especially the apartment buildings and the handful of high rises that are in Springfield? I think most of us who have cable of some sort use Comcast, and Comcast boasts about how many people are hooked up, but it's really buildings they're looking at, and
not individual.
And if you had somebody who lived further up, then they ran more cable up the side of your house. But if the next person didn't use them, they may not be able to use it.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm seeing that there's something in the chat, but I can't see the entire message, and I'm not sure if that's an additional question or something
I think it's an old one.
Okay.
While we're doing that, I think it's important to note the Ethernet is about 5 times faster than Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi will go about 20 feet, maybe, and then you have to have it boosted. So if you have a building, we're talking about maybe 2 boosting devices on each floor. if you're going to cover each one of the tenants. And, so it's probably more economical to run Ethernet cable up, just because of the problems that come from Wi-Fi. I have to be at some places where I have to use Wi-Fi, so I'm buying a couple boosters to plug in next to the hotspot so I can therefore maybe use the signal.
I see.
My parents used to live in a place that you had to drive to the Pizza Hut to get a cell phone signal, and if you didn't do that, no cell phone signal, so.
Yes. So, the comment that was in the chat is from Charlie, who was suggesting people download documents so you can read it because ahead of time or offline, so to speak, because that's not always feasible given bandwidth differences.
So let me see if I can summarize here. We are very much in position to work with the city of Springfield and you as representatives of the city of Springfield to help get this process underway and completed over the next few months. We will do our best to expedite the paperwork on the MBI side of the equation. I'm hoping that we can make that happen. They have been notoriously slow on getting paperwork through, so I don't want to promise anything that I can't guarantee. We are really appreciative of who we've worked with so far in the city. And I want to once again say thank you to Wayfinders. They have been a partner so far, and I expect we're going to be partners going through this going forward. We've already talked about that, and that is great. And we look forward to all of the information and all of the feedback. And we know that there are going to be some moments where people are very critical of not necessarily what we're doing, but how things have been. And we know we need to take all of that in and work with all of the information and not just cherry pick the information we like. And last but not least, this is an important piece of development for the city to be able to work this out. And we're happy to be involved in a way with the city that can help make that happen.
Thank you. I think we are fortunate to be working with some real pros here who can help us through this process and help us qualify for funding down the line. That it's coming from the feds to the state and can come back to us as residents of Springfield. Right now, I'm not seeing any other hands raised or questions in the chat.
Can I just say one
please.
thing that I've learned from other things that PVPC has been involved with, where they've had outreach to the community? I would just like to suggest that we learn from that and perhaps be a little more imaginative in terms of where those sessions are held. Like I live in McKnight. A lot of the meetings have been at the Mason Square Library, which is a central location. But then the suggestion was made that if you want more people from the Latino community within McKnight, we have to go where they live, which is not around the Mason Square Library. This is not a criticism of PVPC. This is something that we learn as we go along and you know, monitoring the turnout at different meetings and so forth. So perhaps we can speak to some of your colleagues who've had meetings already in different parts of the city and see which places have worked well, which places have been where the turnout has not been as great as we would like to see.
Yes, we will do that, and I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah. And before I jump to Charlie's question or comment, given it's about 10 of, I think, our ending time, and one thing that Councillor Fenton had asked us to do as a subcommittee of the would be to endorse the scope of work that has been presented to you, and it was emailed out a couple of days ago. So if we can allow time for that to do that before we wrap up today, I would appreciate it. What do you have, Charlie?
I am just thinking about something that we said before, and that is in physically, the European population may actually be smaller, but I'm afraid that in terms of influence, the white European population still has a great deal of influence. So it's like it's two things happening, and I am sad that that's the case, but it is. So it's just a reality, and I know there's some people who just think there's no way of being able to be heard because of the color of my skin, which I do not like that idea at all. I want to hear them. So, but I want to say that I realize that the demographics are changing. So minorities seem to be majorities, but I'm afraid that some of us have a whole lot more influence than we really ought to have. And that's my comment about myself too.
I'll say, networks, being mindful of what you've just said and being very intentional about how we get the word out, who gets invited and so forth. I hope that makes sense.
And Charlie, the good news is we get to determine how to engage the community so we can compensate or we can address that in our own practice. So thanks for the call out.
I see B's hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate space and time to ask, but I guess I have a logistics question. Since Wayfinders does convene a resident-led digital equity coalition, and we meet with working groups in Springfield and Holyoke, they want to be engaged. So is there, I don't even know if you're this far ahead, if you develop a strategy on how you will engage groups such as that, would you encourage them to come to these meetings as well? Are you getting the word out about this meeting so others can? I think the process is difficult. You know, we had folks who wanted to come, but we don't get the Zoom link. City Council doesn't release Zoom links until later in the day. And so that's a bit of a challenge to inform residents. But so logistically, just how deeply engaged do you want residents to be, even with this work as a working group? And then how will you engage groups going forward?
I think that the meeting that we went to at Wayfinders is a good example of the type of outreach that we need to do. And we'll take the help in terms of getting those people to the meetings or to the charrettes at whatever level. And our style in terms of holding public meetings is to get the information out and the links out ahead of time in as clear a way as possible. So using as many forms of media as we can, whether it's social media or the TV or whatever, Focus Springfield, we're all good with that. Our goal is to get the word out and get people in the building to talk to us. We're not trying to hide from anybody.
Here, B, this is Michael. Oh, I gotta talk to that thing. That's so weird.
Talk to the hand.
And I think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but after this set of meetings, it sort of shifts from being meetings connected to the working group to PVPC figuring out how to engage the community directly. So who's holding the links and what the agenda creation is and where the settings are much closer to the ground than so far.
And that's what we have to work out with
Yes.
all of you as well.
Yeah, I can almost imagine the coalition that you're connected with being a sponsor for a forum or charrette. So that the organizing and the outreach follows their lead. So that would make total sense for how we want to proceed. So I think creative or unique strategies, both addressing Charlie's point and your point, are really wide open. So I don't think there's any constraints on what we do.
I just want to clarify though, with
Thank you.
respect to the working groups, is that there are, 4 or 5 or a half dozen of them. It involved an application process and the members were chosen and appointed. So I don't think the working group itself is something that can be, I think we can hold meetings where we invite people, but it's not a public meeting in the typical way in which we think of public meetings. They are recorded and the recording is available online for anyone who wants to view the meeting. I hope I'm not misrepresenting what the working group is, but I don't think the working group itself can be expanded at this point.
Right, so we would be working with the working group, with the citizens group, and doing the outreach to the general population as well.
Thank you, that's helpful. The clarification was important for me. Thanks.
So I'd like to make a motion that we, as a committee, approve the scope of services as presented and discussed. And with that, support NVI giving us some money.
Second the motion.
I third that motion.
I agree, as long as we understand that Frank included as discussed, because there were a few suggestions that were made for additions to what's in the draft.
As discussed, some of the upgrades, yeah.
I'm never easy.
That's why they're gonna hire you, Roberta.
Keep everybody honest.
If that happens to be an amendment to the motion, the second agrees.
And so does the third.
Okay. I also will support endorsing this scope of work as discussed this evening. So it
Right.
sounds unanimous from everyone who is here, correct?
Is there anybody opposed? Hearing none, it's passed.
Thank you. This was a really interesting evening for us to be part of, and we appreciate your help and support.
Charlie, check your email and give me a call.
Okay, will do.
All right,
I'm off to a tennis union meeting right now.
all right.
Okay, it's the busiest man in Springfield, busiest person in Springfield.
Jean, should I officially end?
We will be in touch.
You know, we
Thank
have
you, everyone.
our next
Thank you. Have a good
Have a great night.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, PVPC, for, attending the meeting. This was an incredibly productive meeting. We all appreciate it, I'm sure, so.
Thank you. Thanks to our guests.
Beautiful.